Well, a very good afternoon and welcome once again to Davos, this time for the men's 15-kilometer individual classic race. And many of you might have been expecting a 30-kilometer race, but because of the paucity of snow, the race distance has been halved. The temperature since the women's race has really increased to almost 5 Celsius, and that's the air temperature, but still a little tricky with the snow temperature in terms of waxing and preparation for this men's test. No less than 88 competitors from 23 countries, and they face 3 loops of 5 kilometers. And as you can see, as they move out of the stadium and on the climb really to 2,500 meters before a kilometer of relatively flat terrain and then a descent back into Davos Stadium for the completion of, as I said, first of 3 rotations. Well, just a minute or so away from the start of the men's 15 individual classic race here. 88 competitors from 23 nations. I'm David Goldstrom, and we have a brightening and warming morning here. Certainly very comfortable for spectators with the air temperature up to just under 5 Celsius. The snow temperature around about -1 here. And this, the second individual classic race over 15 kilometers for the season. It was originally planned for 30 kilometers, but the paucity of snow has meant that Davos have been forced to halve the distance, and they've done a monumental achievement here, a monumental task in bringing the snow down to make this 5-kilometer loop from the Fluela Pass at about 2,800 meters in the night time to load up the trucks to bring the snow down to make this 5-kilometer loop. So this is the first of our competitors to get underway, representing Estonia, and the seeded group start with Kurdan Pearl wearing bib number 30 at 15 minutes to the hour. For British interest, well, Andy Musgrave, who finished 33rd in Finland, a personal best over 15 kilometers in classic style. He wears bib number 40, and he's hoping for better fortune than he had last weekend over this distance and in this style. Ski preparation didn't quite work out for him, but nonetheless looking for a point-scoring run from him. And as I said, he wears bib 40. The last to start, and that's going to be Martin Jonsrud Sundby. He was second in Ruka in Kuusamo in the first of these 15-kilometer classic tests, and he gets underway at 14 minutes past the hour. So quite a big field, as you see the specialist sprinter Emil Jonsson, bronze medalist at the last Olympic Games in freestyle mode, but starting earlier here for Sweden. And just reflecting as these early starters go out at the terrific effort of Theresa Johaug in demolishing the women's event over 10 kilometers a little earlier in the day. An astonishing 42.5 seconds ahead of Marit Björgen, with Kerttu Niskanen finishing really quickly for Finland to be 58 seconds behind Johaug, and again an enormous differential, but to get the better of Anna Haag, who went early with bib number 8. That was a really exceptionally good run by her. She was 67 seconds behind Johaug, but nonetheless a very good 4th place finish. And all the time the likes of Sofia Blekur, who finished 5th for Sweden, Kowalczyk, who really lost time on the downhill sections, which are not her favourite, and she finished in 7th place, 81 seconds down on Theresa Johaug, and Kowalczyk in 7th place. But it was noticeable that the top 10 positions, apart from Kowalczyk, were all occupied by Norwegians, Finns and Swedes. And I wouldn't say that Kowalczyk's a back number yet, but interesting to see how she prepares for what are the big occasions for her, the Tour de Ski and, of course, the World Championships. But now time to concentrate on the men's race here. And looking at the men who should be involved here, well, of course, Iivo Niskanen of Finland, he was the man who really produced the performance of his life to win in Kuusamo on Finnish snow, and Sundby of Norway was runner-up to him, and third Sami Jojovi, who's got a decent record here. Of course, the Olympic champion is the homegrown Dario Colonia, and interestingly enough that he's actually still waiting to win a World Cup race or even a stage race in Switzerland, his home country. He's finished in 7 starts in distance races here in Switzerland on the podium just once when he was runner-up in Davos. That was 2 seasons ago in a 15-kilometer freestyle race. So out of 13 races in Switzerland, a couple of second places and 1 third place. That's what Dario Colonia will be trying to improve on today. So Jonas Baumann about to start, and a little bit more of the history of the distance races here in Davos. Once this man gets away, and once we come back after the following messages. Well, if you're just joining us, a very good afternoon to you from Davos as we pick up Emil Jonsson in the very early stages of this men's 15-kilometer classic individual test, the second of its kind of the season after the opener in Ruka in Kuusamo, won by Iivo Niskanen, of course, and a decent crowd on this afternoon, which has warmed up to just about 5 Celsius, so pretty comfortable for spectating. The snow temperature just under -1, and a big field of starters here, 88 from some 23 countries. Now, the favourites, of course, are seeded to start at the back of the field. The last to go will be the leading World Cup racer. That's Martin Jonsrud Sundby of Norway, who wears bib number 88 and was the runner-up to Iivo Niskanen in Ruka in Kuusamo. And Kerttu Niskanen, a great race for herself and Finland, in 3rd place in the women's 10K individual race earlier today, which was totally dominated by Teresa Johaug and her accomplished climbing of a course of 5 kilometers, which the men will do 3 times, and essentially it's a track of 2 halves. 2,500 meters of virtually continuous climbing as you leave the stadium, a kilometer of undulating but relatively flat terrain from 2.5 to 3.5, and then 1,500 meters of essentially downhill descent back into the Davos Stadium. This, the 10th consecutive race in Davos in classic style, and all the previous 9 races have had some 9 different winners, going back to the likes of Björn Daly, who won here in the years of 97 and 98, but then those were both 30-kilometer classic races, which is what we should have been taking today, but the paucity of snow has meant that the organisers have faced a really monumental task, and they've done so admirably. They've gone up from the 1,500 meters of altitude where we are starting off today's race to 2,300, 2,400 meters, where the rat tracks have brought snow down from the higher altitude to the trucks waiting on the Fluela Pass, which is both spectacular and quite challenging, and they brought the snow down to make today's 5-kilometer loop. And Davos also taking over the responsibility of next week's races, which were planned for La Clusaz in France. Not enough snow there, so the guys and girls are going to be staying here for another week. Prior to today, Well, a lot of the teams were training at Livigno in Italy, but here we are in the canton of Graubünden in Davos, well known as a tourist centre, but these days arguably better known as the host of the annual World Economic Forum. Some 11,000 people live in this part of the world, but believe it or not, it's actually got a declining population by about 5% a year. And not quite perhaps the tourist mecca that it once was. So Lucas Bauer, number 23 of the 88 to start. And Lucas hasn't really found his form quite yet. But when he does, he could be a real danger. A man who's won 11 times in his career, Lucas Bauer. And 15 kilometers in classic style. Whether it was classic or freestyle, he'd still be a threat at his best. Eldar Röning, well, 4 times a world champion and 11 World Cup victories also for Eldar Röning. But perhaps the race that sticks in my mind is when he was a runner-up in 2011 in Oslo, 15 kilometers in classic style there. But a very important contributor to the Norwegian relay team as well. Stanislav Bolzentsev, 29 years of age, and he was outside the top 30 in Ruka. And I can tell you that up the first 2 kilometers, the sprinter, the Olympic bronze medalist, Emil Jonsson, representing Sweden, the fastest up here, as you can see now, in 4:44. This is a little further on, 2.8 kilometers. Jonsson here in 5:58.4, ahead of Jonas Dubler of Germany. Hannes Dotzler for Germany. Bronze medalist a couple of seasons ago in Erzurum in Turkey in 2012 in the under-23 World Skiathlon, and also in the 15-kilometer Classic. Chernusov yet really to announce himself as a likely contender for today's race. And Russia so far with not very many noticeable efforts. So 28, Marcus Hellner for Sweden. Doesn't win very often in World Cup competitions, but was third last season in Toblach in the 15-kilometer classic stage of the Tour de Ski. That would be a strong pointer to him, given that he's in decent shape to take this on. But we're closing very quickly now to the first of the seeded races. That's going to be Switzerland's Kerdan Pearl from Pontresina, just down the road from St. Moritz. Member of the Bernina Pontresina Club. A man with a couple of Olympic Games and no less than 4 World Championships under his belt. Kerdan, who's had well over 60 World Cup starts, but yet to make the podium. Very good contributor to Swiss relays, and good to see that some of his supporters have turned out as he goes out on what is virtually the only flat part of the course, the first 150 meters out of the stadium. But even as he gets to the end of this first segment here, the terrain starts to rise up, and you can see the preparation here. These men starting at 30-second intervals, and just off the side you can see it's a little thin in terms of snow cover. But I can't emphasize too much how well the organisers have done. And Skobolev of Russia challenging Johnson up the first climb. And it was this climb, particularly the first 2,500 metres, where Teresa Johaug really profited in her 2 rotations earlier today in the women's 10K, in which she just showed herself to be in a completely different division, even to her illustrious teammate Marit Bjørgen, who, even finishing in second place, 42 seconds, can you believe that? 42 seconds behind Teresa Johaug, continues to lead the World Cup. Martiniaks for the Czech Republic. Just one podium in his career. It's Danusa, Marius Danusa for Switzerland, and 48 getting ready, Peter Northug. Northug, who's yet to reach his top form. One shiny result, I suppose you could say, in the very first race, the Sprint Classic final from Peter, when he was runner-up, but in the 15 kilometers in Kusamo, actually down in 23rd place. But he is better than that, and now Bauer up at 2,800 meters. And Bauer has actually, in the last 800 meters, he's zipped past Emil Jonsson, who was leading 800 meters earlier, but he's taken 2 seconds out of him in that 800-meter part of the course. 36. This is Lars Nelson. Just a reminder that Andy Musgrave of Great Britain wears bib number 40 this afternoon, as the Wacam zips back to see the departure of Lars Nelson of Sweden. The Swedish servicemen did a really good job this morning for the women's team. Devon Corshaw will be the next seeded man to start. Bohensev a little bit down, 4 or 5 seconds down on Bauer. So again, Bauer very good from 2,000 to 2,800 meters.
And we have a world champion starting next. He won the team sprint in Oklahoma in 2011 from Capital Alberta, Canada, Devon Kershaw.
So Devon Kershaw away. When they get to 2,000 meters, there's a couple of what I would call as spiky climbs. And here further down the course, Razim, but these men are very much early starters. Whether they're pathfinders, it's too early to tell at the moment. Anna Haug was very definitely the pathfinder in the women's race. So Kershaw under his way. Andrew Musgrave about to start. Where's bib number 40? Be nice to get back and see him. Not sure we're going to be given that treat at the moment. And Johnson has been leaking time to the likes of Razim. One of two of the more favoured men, 50 there. That's Tony Livers, you just saw. had one victory, shared a victory in freestyle here many, many years ago. So we seem to have deserted the starters at the moment. Nusiainen on his way, Musgrave on his way, Johansson and Jean-Marc Gaillard. Jean-Marc Gaillard wears 46, Peter Northug wears 48, and there's Peter Northug. What's he going to do today? I'll keep you up to date with Andy Musgrave, but Peter Northug going towards the start now.
Jetzt ein Mann mit einem großen Motor. Konrad Motor aus Polen.
Well, the man we need to keep an eye on actually is Lukas Bauer, because he is the man who I think is going to give us an early barometer to the racing. Bauer, who was through the second time check at 2.8 kilometers in 5:55. And there you can see his time as Tudyshev of Russia comes up there, already surpassed that, and Bauer at 5 kilometers waiting for him to go through. So far the fastest through 5 kilometers is Ales Razim, ahead of the Frenchman Adrien Bachscheider and Jonas Baumann, who are virtually together in terms of time. Nelson. So Bauer very much our pathfinder now. So Peter Northug, what sort of race is it going to be? His best distance race of the season. He certainly, after the opening competitions in Finland and Lillehammer, now knows where he is in terms of his shape, his condition, his preparation, and we'll track him closely as we go through the race here. Just having a look at the starters and trying to Andrew Musgrave not yet at 2 kilometers, and a new leader 3 kilometers from home here, Doubler of Germany, the first of the two there in a row. And Andy Kuhner wears 12, and he started 30 seconds ahead of Jonas Doubler. So Tony Livers now for Switzerland, as I mentioned a few moments ago. His one and only World Cup success coming here a few years back now, and now 31 years of age, Tony Livers. Lukas Bauer has gone through 5 kilometers, by the way, in second place, because Eldar Röning, the 15-kilometer classic specialist, has really quickened up, 13.00.3, and actually Bauer is 6.9 seconds behind him, and Razim, who was leading at the 1/3 distance, 10.2 seconds off that pace. Andrew Musgrave through the first 2 kilometers, 10.9 seconds down on Emil Jonsson, which makes him 10 seconds behind Lukas Bauer in the first 2,000 meters. 44, Martin Johansson of Sweden on the right of your picture. And they're following Bachscheider of France. But I think it's the likes of Roening and Bauer now that we should be more interested in. Interval number 4 is at 7 kilometers, so just short of half distance. Andrew Musgrave at 2,800 meters, 14 seconds down on Lukas Bauer. So that's 4 seconds lost in the last 800 meters for Andrew. And so not an auspicious start by him, but a long journey. He still has 12 kilometers to go, so maybe he can reduce that deficit, having, of course, produced a terrific personal best in Lillehammer in the freestyle race, but this much tougher. 40.56 De Fabiani for the Italians, wearing those red suits this year. De Fabiani in 20th place in the World Cup. He was 13th though in the classic race over today's distance in Finland. '66, Paul Goldberg, 9th, top 10 in Finland. And now Yevgeny Belov, top 20 in that first 15-kilometer classic race of the season. Belov, who's ranked in 17th place, got his best result so far of the season in race number 4. That was the 10-kilometer freestyle individual. Whether he's going to be as effective today, time will tell. Petter Northug up the first 2 kilometers in 4:43.6. So the quickest starter at the moment is Petter Northug, wearing bib number 48, up the first climb out of the stadium. Now Lukas Bauer up to 7 kilometers, so short of the half distance. But this is a reasonably encouraging start, but his disadvantage is going so early because everybody can read their time splits off him. But this a much more promising performance than we've seen so far. And Sami Joijärvi, a man who actually has done well here over the years. He's had a couple of podium finishes. He was 3rd in 2007 and 2008 here on the podium, but a little distant in the memory, but in not bad form this season. Yeah, just picking up on Joijärvi. Certainly a man who can be comfortable at this distance in classic style. 3rd, of course, in Finland in the overall 15-kilometer individual classic race in Kusamo. Legjanin of Russia. And so far, when you look at the World Cup rankings, there's only Legjanin who's in the top 15. He was 11th in Finland in this particular discipline, and equaled that in the 15-kilometer classic pursuit race in Lillehammer last weekend. So Legjanin with plenty to prove. Chris-Andre Jespersen, 2nd quickest up the first climb for Norway, just 400ths behind Northug, ahead of Emil Jonsson by 400ths, and a second, 1.4 seconds ahead of Lucas Bauer. So wearing bib number 52, Jespersen, just behind Northug, but at 2.8 kilometers, you can see that Jespersen now is a second or so, almost a second ahead of Northug. So a little turnaround there, and his game time also on Lucas Bauer. He's doubled the advantage over the Czech racer Jespersen in the first 2,800 meters of essentially climbing here in Davos. Eldar Röning he's leading, I should say, at 7 kilometers, 6 seconds ahead of Lucas Bauer. And just a reminder that it was Teresa Johaug who absolutely dominated the race. And just actually having a look at that result there, I think that's actually an error, because that is there's the results of the women's slalom, but I wanted to just go back. Teresa Johaug beat Marit Bjørgen by 42 seconds, so that graphic earlier on there was incorrect, and Kertu Niskanen was 58 seconds back. Biathlon, Hochfilzen, Germany in the ascendant in the women's relay. Men's relay still to come. 72 about to get underway pretty shortly now, and that'll be Daniel Rickardsson for Sweden. 74 is Simon Østersen for Norway, who had a very good 8th place finish in Finland in the World Cup race there, number 2 of the season. Matti Heikkinen wears 78, and he was 10th in Finland. And dancing up here now, 56, and that is De Fabiani. And De Fabiani 10-11 seconds off the pace behind Chris-Andre Jespersen. Alex Harvey for Canada. Alex, who was 7th best in Finland. Colonia wears 70. He's going to be the next man to start. 75 in picture there at the board. That was Candide Pralong of Switzerland. So 70. Dario Colonia, can he do something he's yet to do here in Switzerland and win a World Cup race? Triple Olympic champion in this discipline, 3 times winner of the Tour de Ski. And Dario Colonia's season sees him in 11th place at the start of today's race. He was outside the top 20 in Finland, but it was a not uncharacteristic start to the season for Dario Colonia. But you can be sure he's going to give it everything here on home snow. Ville Nusiainen of Finland has now gone quicker than Eldar Röning, and also Lucas Bauer up to the 5 kilometer point in 12:59.9. So Finland in the lead there after the first rotation, and Devon Kershaw just under 5 seconds down on him. Lucas Bauer 7 seconds back. So Nusiainen making some headlines at the moment, and Joujärvi tenth place.
8 seconds ahead of Jonas Doblen.
Lost 4 seconds in the last 800 meters, Joujärvi.
Maciej Greczner aus Polen, der nächste am Start. Wir warten jetzt auf Dö. Wie kommt der?
Nobody in the clubhouse as yet. Waiting for the finishers to arrive, but Kershaw now at 7 kilometers. Second to Eldar Rønning by just under 4 seconds. Now, Simen Håkon Østersen for Norway. Could be interesting to see how he goes. He was top 10 in Finland in race number 2 of the season.
The world champion at this distance. Plutselig 9 sekunder etter Northug, og det bare nedoverbakke fra vendepunkt omtrent. Bare 1 sekund foran det forrige passer. Og snart ehemalige junioren-veltmeister Aivar hemma, altså Island.
So still a few to get away. Nusiainen leading at 7 kilometers. And now Kari Halvarsen, 6th best in Finland. Good World Cup season for him, and he's going to be an important player in Sweden's chances at the World Championships in February, particularly as a member of their relay squad. As Halvarsen double poles out with much purpose. Paul Goldberg now the fastest man up 2 kilometers. He's gone up in 44:35.4. And that's actually quicker by almost 2 seconds than Dario Colonia. Peter Northug 8 seconds slower, and Paul Goldberg actually at 2,800 meters 5:46, 7 seconds quicker than Chris Jespersen, 7.9 quicker than Northug, 9.3 better than Lukas Bauer of the Czech Republic, and also Leg Janin 9 seconds off that time, and Alex Harvey 10 seconds down. So at 5 kilometers, I tried to give you a little check on Andrew Musgrave, if I can track him. 56 seconds down, Andrew Musgrave. That's on Peter Northug's time at 5 kilometers. So at the moment, Musgrave, unfortunately, not really making much impression. And here comes Northug. Now chasing Nusiainen, but being forced to herringbone. Still has a little ways to go to that timing wand. Nusiainen in the lead there, and Northug that much quicker. Eldar Rønning through 10 kilometers, 9 seconds ahead of Bauer. And Rickardson a little bit slower than Colonia, and Paul Goldberg of Norway, who's still the quickest up the initial climb. And Razim home 41:20. Just check on that for a moment. (41:26.9), and I'll try to give you a reference on that in terms of, let's say, Razim at 5 kilometers. behind the likes of... yeah, he was 25 seconds behind Northug when Northug went through 5 kilometers. But nonetheless, a decent effort there, and behind Eldar Runing, Razim 35 seconds down at 10 kilometers. So 2.2 kilometers to go for Skobolev, and Skobolev actually 17 seconds behind Runing at 10 kilometers. So, the World Cup champion, Martin Jonsrud Sundby, who is underlining that last year was absolutely no fluke, and he was runner-up to Ivo Niskanen in Finland in the first 15-kilometer classic of the season. But after that, of course, was successful in Lillehammer in the 10-kilometer freestyle, and also winner of the overall 3-day triple at Lillehammer, which earned him an extra 200 points. So he's got 391 points ahead of Norwegian teammate Finn Horgen Krogh, with Paul Goldberg in 3rd place overall, Shirota in 4th place, and Kalle Halvarsson 5th in the overall World Cup rankings before today's race. So Bauer travelling about 10 seconds slower, I have to say, than Runing. That was at 10 kilometres. This is, as you can see, 12.8. And Runing now started at 30 seconds behind. Where's 24? And 5.9 seconds. So Lucas Bauer and Runing, it's slightly turning in Lucas Bauer's favour at the moment. And there you get that idea of the steepness of the climb out of the stadium here, better than anywhere else really at 2.8. It's the first of 2 little spikes that take them up to 3,500 meters, which is the top of the climb. And Halvarsson, who's just about where he was behind Paul Goldberg 800 meters ago. Baumann into the finish. But Razim is safe. Well, Didrik Tørnset of Norway just about 5 seconds behind Paul Goldberg at 2 kilometers. The same behind his Norwegian teammate at 2.8 kilometers. So good start by him. He's quicker than his other Norwegian teammate, Chris Jespersen, as Dobler finishes in 1st place to push Ares Razim out of the chair. So Dobler's going to count that as a very good run. 23 years of age. This is the new German generation. Has had less than 10 World Cup starts so far, and showed up at under 23 world level in top 15, and came close to a medal as a junior in 2011 in Otapa, over 10 kilometers in freestyle. So Johannes Dobler, the new leader in the clubhouse from Ares Razim, and looking back down the trail to just see Martin Jonsrud Sundby now just slower than Tørnset up the initial climb. Martin Jonsrud Sundby, 88, having started and on his way. And for Finnish fans, Ivo Niskanen 9.5 seconds down on Paul Goldberg early on, but may not be too much to read into, but important that he started with that sort of deficit to take note, because he's got a lot of really good racers ahead of him. But Peter Northug's only a second faster, likewise Shirota, as Sundby now comes up to this particular point. So Sundby Sundby has picked up a couple of seconds in the last 800 meters, and at 2,800 meters, Paul Goldberg still the leader from Dario Colonia by 1.5 seconds. They're racing at about the same pace. Daniel Rickardson 3.3. He's lost a fraction to those two. Best for Sweden. Sundby has reduced the deficit from 6 to 4 seconds. Didrik Turnseth is just about where he was. Jespersen 7 seconds, and Jespersen just losing a little ground. Shirota 7.4, so he's made a second as we have a new leader in the clubhouse, Pellegrin. Skobalev's going to take over, so no time for Pellegrin to even get in the chair. So Ladislav Skobelev, 27 years of age, less than 10 World Cup starts for his country, and he was 30th in Lahti, so a real chance of actually a new personal best over this distance. And all the field having started, there is the situation up the first climb. Of course, it's not completely finished the climb. It goes up to 3,500 meters. In total, there's a climb of 546 meters over the 15 kilometers, and a maximum, a steepest climb of 41 meters, and a differential from the stadium to the highest point of 85 meters. So coming to the end of the first loop, and it's Dario Colonia who's in the lead ahead of Shirota. And Dario Colonia and Shirota, right at the beginning of the race, were separated by half a dozen seconds. Dario's made a bit of progress. Rickardson in third place, and Colonia now up at 7 kilometers. 5 kilometers, he was 19-20 seconds ahead of Chris-Andre Jespersen. So that shrunk from 19 seconds over the last 2 kilometers to Lucas Bauer across the line ahead of, or just behind, I should say, Eldar Röning. So those times were changing, and Röning 40.47 ahead of Bauer and Skobelev. They're separated by 8 seconds or so. 72 coming up here. Rickardson at 7 kilometers, less than half distance. Rickardson was traveling 9 seconds slower than Colonia 2 kilometers ago. Colonia, well, it's about the same. So Colonia, just having a look at Colonia's relationship to Jespersen. At Colonia 13 seconds ahead of Jespersen at 7.8 kilometers, and that means that actually either Jespersen was gaining because he was 19 seconds back, And Northug, by the way, behind Jespersen. So Jespersen is the Norwegian who's actually gaining, certainly in terms of position and to a certain extent in terms of time. Chris Andre, who had his best result last weekend in Lillehammer in the 10-kilometer free, was 6th there. He was 45th in the 15-kilometer classic race in Finland in Kuusamo, so certainly at the moment doing a lot better than that. And into the finish, Helna. Still waiting for Sundby to come up to the 5-kilometer point. And also Turnseth's there, but Turnseth was behind Cologne. He was early on just about 3 seconds behind Cologne, but at 5 kilometers the difference is 12 seconds. So Cologne traveling with some purpose. Cologne traveling about the same speed as Daniel Rickardsson. Jespersen definitely making up the deficit. Northug losing time to Cologne. And Gojärvi has stabilized between 5 and 7.8 kilometers, has stabilized his differential to 21 seconds. Now, Northug with a little more than 2.2 kilometers to go, wearing 48 in the middle of that field, so 2.8 seconds ahead. Martin Junsrud Sundby, meanwhile, has gone through the stadium again, 14 seconds down on Dario Cologne. Now, that's really interesting because at 2,800 meters, Martin Junsrud Sundby was only 4.4 seconds down, but between 2,800 and 5 kilometers, Sundby has lost time to the tune of 14 seconds to Cologne. Kalle Halvarsen, well, he was about 6 seconds down on Cologne. And Halvarsen now 9 seconds down, but still within striking distance. New leader Martin Jaks of the Czech Republic team, 40.35.6, has taken the lead in the clubhouse, has pushed Eldar Röning out of the nice warm chair. Lukas Bau of the Czech Republic in 3rd place. So Martin Jaks actually 17.5 seconds quicker than Lukas Bau. Now Jespersen coming up here to this point, and you can see 18 seconds ahead of Northug. So that really is becoming quite decisive now. Jespersen certainly advancing.
Ja gut, ich habe gestern schon mit der Startnummernübergabe darüber geredet, dass Rennen heute ist
Wahrscheinlich.
aber nächste Woche kommt ein Brillen.
Gas wieder rein.
Yeah, Northug, the gap at 10 kilometers was down to 3 seconds over Northug over Jespersen. Järvi just behind Northug, but Niskanen now. And a little slip there from the man in blue, and you can see that at the half distance this race is evaporating, disappearing from him. Likewise Nusiainen. And 29 seconds, even though there's half the race to go, difficult to see them capturing or recapturing that sort of deficit. At 7.8 kilometers, Didrik Tørnseth of Norway, worth taking note of there, 7.3 seconds down on Cologne. Rickardson 8.4 down, Shirota within 10 seconds, Jespersen was within 13. Now the difference between Cologne and Northug was 17 seconds in favour of the Italian. So Cologne having at the moment a really good run. So coming really to the climax of this race now, and Drughaug not really in contention. 8 kilometers to go and 41 seconds to find. Don't see that happening either. So Sundby up there, and he's got 5-6 seconds to make on Cologne. As coming home, Nusiainen to just finish 300ths behind Martin Jaks. But it's all about Cologne and Sundby at the moment. And Sundby, who has been really steady in his pacing, now matching Cologne. Now this could be really interesting on the run for home. So Sundby at 7 kilometers within 6 seconds. Rickardson at that point within 9. Likewise Tørnseth. Reuter 10 seconds off the point. Jespersen 13 seconds back from Cologne. And Järvi not looking as if the podium is going to be for him today. It's some 21 seconds back at 7 kilometers. Well, just underway at Hochfilzen, the men's relay, and as soon as this race concludes, we'll be across to Austria. Mike Dixon together with Patrick Winton, your hosts for the men's relay. But this is now a race in its concluding stages here in Davos. Martin Jaks still the man who leads in the clubhouse, 40 minutes 35.6 ahead of Nusiainen and Eldar Röning. Lukas Bauer off the podium and Skobolev in 5th place. And Gaillard outside, but into 3rd place to push Eldar Röning off the podium. So Cologne being closed on, I can tell you, by Martin Jonsrud Sundby, who's just taken a second out of Cologne in the last 800 metres, up to 7,800 metres. And Didrik Tørnseth 7.3 seconds back. Rickardson 8.4. Shirota within 10. Jespersen still within 13. So Petter Northug now to take the lead away from Martin Jaks. Comes into the final 100 meters. And you can see it's a tight time, 25 meters in fact, as he makes the turn and just gets there by a second. Pushes Martin Jaks down to second, Nusiainen to third, and Gaia off the podium. And it's been a hard start to the new campaign for Petter Northug.
Du leder dette løpet. Du gjør det med 1 sekund. 10 kilometer.
10 kilometers. Cologne through, leading 18 seconds over Reuter. So Reuter's lost time, and so has Daniel Rickardson. They both lost the best part of 10 seconds to Dario Cologne. Just looking at this, between 7.8 and 10 kilometers, they have lost time, big time actually. 10 seconds they've lost, and Petter Northug, he was also losing time to Cologne, moving up from 7.8 to 10 kilometers, which is really all descent. So it tells you that Dario Cologne on the descent really making time. Still waiting for Sundby and Turnseth to reach that particular point. Of course, Dario Cologne bidding for a first ever victory. Here comes Jespersen. So this is an interesting target. Takes a big bite out of Northug's time. Well, at about 10 kilometers, there were only 2 or 3 seconds between them. That's Jespersen and Northug, but Jespersen the faster finisher. Much faster finisher, because that time difference at 10 kilometers was 3 seconds in favor of Petter Northug. So you can say that Jespersen has taken 25 seconds out of Northug in the last 5 kilometers. Martin Jaks down to third, and Ville Nusiainen off the podium into fourth place. Jean-Marc Gaillard, the best for France, ahead of Eldar Röning. And now Cologne moving up to this 12.8 point distance here. And Cologne 14 seconds ahead of Jespersen. Just having a little comparison on that. Cologne at 10 kilometers was 26 seconds ahead of Jespersen as Besmertic goes into the top 10, but Jespersen really traveling, because at 10 kilometers Jespersen was 26 seconds behind Cologne. At 12.8 kilometers, he'd reduced that 26.9 second deficit to 14.8. And Jauhojärvi 16.5 seconds behind Dario Cologne. Rickardson at 10 kilometers, 18.4 seconds behind Cologne, coming up to the line here. And this is quite interesting, because you're seeing a number of races here who have got the deficit down. Now for Rickardson, that's a 7-second reduction. So Cologne, who was very effective on the run down to 10 kilometers, here on the last part of the course, the last part of the climb, not going so well. Jespersen in the clubhouse. 40.13, and Chris-Andre Jespersen, 31 years of age, and could be on for his best of the season. He was a runner-up last year in the 50-kilometer Tour de Ski race, and now Belov, who was some 38 seconds down at 12.2 kilometers, or 12.8 kilometers, I should say, into 6th place, but he's going to get pushed down further than that. In the clubhouse, Jespersen for Norway, Northug for Norway, Martin Jaks for the Czech Republic, Nusiainen off the podium in 4th place, and Gaillard is 5th. Belov into 6th ahead of Eldar Röning. Lucas Bauer now down to 8th place ahead of Ladislav Skobelev of Russia, and Best Mertic, and Sami Järvi takes the lead and 8 seconds ahead of Jespersen. So Järvi, who was only 2 seconds down on Jespersen, looks as if he's paced his race really well. Shirota, who was faster than both Jespersen and Järvi, 9 seconds down on Cologne. And again, this tells a story here, because he was 18 seconds down at 10 kilometers. So from 10 to 12 kilometers, that climb out of the stadium, Cologne really running into trouble on the climb. Shirota, 9 seconds off Cologne at the penultimate, well, the last checkpoint before the finish. Can Shirota make up 9 seconds on the final descent? It would be a big ask. So Sami Järvi, who's been on the podium twice in his career here, leads the way. 3rd in 2007, 3rd in 2008. So Finland, Norway, Russia, the 1, 2, 3, with Legjanin going into 3rd place. So Turnstedt is going to be really interesting to watch here, because everybody gaining time, and if Turnstedt is doing that, and Sundby as well, then Cologne, when we get to 12.8, it could be very, very tight at the top of the leaderboard. Heikkinen 47 seconds down, no impression on that. I'll just try to Järvi in the clubhouse. Andrew Musgrave 3 minutes 40.8 for his 15 kilometers at the moment, ranked in 49th spot.
Hast du mehrere Sponsoren? Fantastisch. Du bist ein reicher Mann. Der Millionär aus Finnland. Sami Järvi. Nobody has so many sponsors.
So still waiting for Turnstedt and Martin Jonsrud-Sundby to get to 12,800 meters. Polteranen more than a minute off, and another disappointing performance there from Polteranen, but certainly a man to keep on the right side of when we get nearer to championship time. Now Turnstedt, this is really interesting to see what he can produce here. Now Turnstedt coming up, he was 13.8 seconds down at Cologne at 10 kilometers. Now as he gained, and he has, look at that, 3 seconds. He's taken 10 seconds out of Cologne. And it's the last climb, and we didn't see much of Cologne, so I can only presume one of two things. Either he was running out of gas, which I think is a little unlikely, or perhaps the material wasn't working as well as it was on the first 2 rotations. But Cologne striving to win, but the odds look against him now. Turnset of Norway with a real opportunity to surpass Colonia in the last 2,000 meters. Alex Harvey and Colonia in the black there of the two, and challenging Järvi at the last time we had a checkpoint. It was 16.5 seconds the advantage that Colonia had over Järvi, and you can see that Colonia finishing strongly, so it may be those uphill sections were where he was really struggling. 18 seconds. So Järvi actually outsped by Colonia on the final 2,000 meters back down to the stadium. It's Colonia ahead of Järvi, Jespersen in third place, and Legjanin off the podium. Peter Northug for Norway in fifth place ahead of the Czech Republic's Martin Jaks. Rian Nusiainen in seventh place for Finland ahead of Jean-Marc Gaillard. The best for France. Belov is down to ninth for Russia, and Alex Harvey finishing in 10th place. Now Niskanen's never been at the races here in terms of the 15-kilometer classic, and maybe the altitude, maybe the difference in course there, but Niskanen, who is not a factor and never has been throughout this journey. So Dario Colonia, could this be his day, or is somebody going to take this away from him? It's still possible that the 28-year-old, a member of the Valmustair club who lives here in Davos, this is his base, and the first victory of the season might be denied to Rickardson. Second place to Colonia, 15 seconds, and he's just a little slower over the last 2,000. He didn't lose much, he didn't gain anything. Sundby coming up here now. Sundby was 15 seconds behind Colonia, and here the writing's on the wall, because this is a massive gain by the World Cup leader. That is a 20-second turnaround from 10 kilometers to 12.7. So the World Cup leader, the defending World Cup champion, Martin Jönsrud Sundby, who's as proficient in freestyle as he is in classic, now has this race in his sights. 5 seconds ahead of Colonia. Enjoying the moment, but it may only be a moment. Turnset, by the way, 8 seconds behind. Shirota, 4 seconds. So the difference between Colonia and Turnset is 3 seconds. So even Didrik Turnset has the opportunity, as you can see there, to get a lifetime best.
Järvi Finland, Jesper Norway registrerte, Legjanin is fifth.
Turnset, who was equal 11th in the 15-kilometer classic. He did win the 15-kilometer pursuit in Lillehammer, so in terms of World Cup victories, that was his first real triumph. But Colonia, Shirota, now Shirota was 14 seconds down, and he's reduced that deficit to, as you can see, 9 seconds. The writing's on the wall here for Colonia. Turnset can beat him, Sundby can beat him. He might actually end up only in third place. Nothing he can do about it. The destiny is in the hands of others here. But Jönsrud Sundby, the World Cup leader, runner-up in Finland, that was on the 30th of November in the 15-kilometer classic. Since then, of course, he was the winner of the 10-kilometer freestyle, and overall he was the winner of the Lillehammer triple. So a little repeat of Colonia, showing that little by little he's coming back to form, or maybe it's better than little by little. Congratulations there from Alex Harvey of Canada. the clubhouse at the moment. Cologne of Switzerland, Rota of Norway, Rikardsen, Järvi is off the podium in 4th place. Heikkinen. Halvarsen, the best of the, well, Rikardsen, the best of the Swedes in the clubhouse. Halvarsen and Rikardsen separated by some 9 seconds, but Heikkinen, as you can see there, only top 10. So Cologne, he's got the better of most of the field, but there are 2 out there who can take this away from him. Kalle Halvarsen. Halvarsen, 25 seconds. Well, he was 20 seconds behind Cologne the last time we checked on him. That was at 12.8 kilometers, and that would be too much of a deficit to eliminate in 24 seconds. But he's made a bit of time on Cologne and goes into 5th place. So Turnstedt, have a look at this now. Turnstedt, who was 8 seconds down on Sundby, but only 3 down on Cologne, coming round into the stadium to skip into the last 50 meters. Less than that to go now. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, has he got there? Yes, he had by 7 hundredths. That's a 7.3 second gain over Cologne in the last 2,200 meters. The descent back into the stadium, and Didrik Turnstedt pushes Cologne down into 2nd place. Schirota to 3rd. Rikardsen's off the podium in 4th place for Sweden, and yet again Dario Cologne has been denied a victory here in Switzerland and here in Davos in particular. He's actually only finished on the podium once here in Switzerland, when he was runner-up here 2 seasons ago in the 15-kilometer freestyle race. But Didrik Turnstedt, who started the day in 5th place in the World Cup rankings, one of, 5 Norwegians in the top 6, and into the lead he goes, the winner of the pursuit race in Lillehammer, the 15-kilometer pursuit, and Sundby to come home. Now, if Turnstedt can do that, and remember Turnstedt was 8 seconds down on Sundby, then it looks as if Sundby is going to take yet another victory and enhance his advantage over his opponents, particularly Finn Hagen Krogh, who maybe seem to better advantage in the sprint tomorrow. Niskanen, well, chalk and cheese really between November and his victory in Finland compared to where he is today. So Sundby's the man we're waiting for, and you can see here Niskanen, well, a couple of World Cup points, 24th place, a few more than that, but nonetheless tough race and never really up there in contention. But now here comes Martin Jonsrud Sundby, and look at this, he was Sundby 5 seconds ahead of Cologne. That was at 12,800 meters, and coming surely down the straight now for yet another success, and he's extended that advantage by 1.6 seconds over the last 2 kilometers, and it's a Norwegian victory yet again. In fact, a Norwegian 1-2. Jonsrud Sundby ahead of Didrik Turnstedt. Cologne in 3rd place on the podium. Shirota of Norway pushed off into 4th place. Daniel Rickardson, the best for Sweden. Järvi in 6th place, the best for Finland. And then you've got Halvarsen for Sweden in 7th, ahead of Jespersen. 33 seconds, the deficit back to him. In 8th place, Legjan in 9th, 51.2 seconds off the lead. And Peter Northug finishing in the top 10 in 4:54.9 seconds, the deficit to Martin Junsrud Sundby. Well, one or two who pulled out of the race include Paul Goldberg and Simon Östersen. So time for us to take our lead because the biathlon is underway at Hochfilzen. And it's the men's relay. Mike Dixon and Patrick Winton are your hosts for that, coming right up here on Eurosport International. But congratulations to Martin Junsrud.